Welcome to Addicted to Busy, the podcast specifically for overachieving property managers who are dying for a little more work-life balance in their lives. Each week, we dismantle all the BS that holds us back. You'll learn how to nix those tricky, self-sabotaging habits so that you have the time, energy, and motivation to create what you really want in life. If you're looking to shift from overcommitted to overjoyed, this is the podcast for you. Let's do this. Now, your host, Anna Havliana.
Welcome back to another episode of Addicted to Busy. I'm Anna Havliana. I'm your host and fellow property manager, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. On this podcast, I tell a lot of stories. I love storytelling. Actually, I just like talking in general. I was definitely one of those kids in elementary school who constantly got sat in the back corner of the classroom because I talked too much. But that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today is the value of storytelling. The other day, I was chatting with a manager from one of our sister sites, and they asked me, how do you know how to give advice when you're coaching or on your podcast? And the question kind of caught me off guard because I don't see or label myself as an advice giver. And in fact, there are plenty of areas in my life where I shouldn't be giving any advice. I'm just a woman with a computer who loves to share stories and loves to be in environments that are motivating and empowering. All I know how and what to share is the experience that I've lived. I know my own stories of when I was really in the thick of burnout and overworking and people pleasing and perfectionisms. I know my own before and after stories of working through those tough situations. And I know the advice or revelations that helped me get there. But as I thought about what my coworker was asking, I realized that I don't necessarily want to be someone who gives advice. I want to be someone who shares stories, right? Think about it from ancient cave paintings and hieroglyphics up to now, where we have podcasts and audiobooks. Storytelling has been around and has evolved for centuries, right? Stories have the ability to evoke emotions within us or inspire us to try new ways of doing things or of being. They're a way of connecting and honoring the humanness that is in all of us. And truly great storytelling has the power to break down barriers and help create change in the world. Through storytelling, we have the opportunity to learn from the experiences of others without having to hopefully go through all of those same struggles ourselves. Sure, I could learn things the hard way, and more often than not, that's exactly what I do. But by listening to stories and reading books, we can see how different people have navigated challenges and come out on the other side stronger and wiser, right? I'll give you a couple of examples. When I first started my coaching business, it was focused more on health and fitness. So I worked with clients to help them eat better, move more, and get more sleep. I had this client who was really struggling with the office candy dish. Anytime she passed it, she grabbed something out of it. And this posed a couple of challenges for her. First of all, it kept her away from her health goals. She wanted to eat better. And even though she was packing her lunches every day and bringing fruits and vegetables with her, she was constantly self sabotaging by grabbing something out of that jar every time she passed it. Second of all, the sugar made her energy levels very unstable. She would experience sugar crashes, and that then made it more difficult for her to do her work in the afternoons. So, during one of our sessions together, she was really upset about how many times she allowed herself to have candy. So I shared a story of mine with her. We also had a candy jar in our office. And at one point in my career, we had a cookie maker and we had to have fresh baked cookies out at all hours of the day. So I knew where she was coming from. There was one afternoon where I had done such a great job of passing the candy jar without taking a single Reese's Pieces. And then at the end of the day, I passed by and I took 3. Now, at first, I got really down on myself and I got super upset. But then I realized I had successfully said no to the candy jar at least 5 times that day. And that was an improvement for me. So those were 5 wins. So I changed my mindset and decided to celebrate that day I went 5 for 6 with the candy jar. The point of the story is that we have a choice in what we focus on. We can focus on the fail or we can expand upon the win. I once heard someone say that we can't let a bump in the road become the very pothole that we get stuck in. So, the next time that I met with my client after sharing that story, she said that every time she passed the candy jar, she thought about collecting wins instead of focusing on telling herself that she can't have candy. My story became her story. What's more, though, is that she shared with me that as she passed the candy jar, she would subtly flip it off so that she felt like she was outwardly saying no to the candy. And I found that pretty funny. And so when I started losing my own way with the candy jar, I started doing the same and would flip the candy jar off as I passed by. Her story became my story. So, for any of you listening in who have office candy jars or popcorn machines or fresh baked cookies in your office, feel free to join in whatever way feels right for you. All of this to say is that sharing stories can give us examples of new ways to handle tough situations by giving us a different perspective or approach. When we hear about someone else's experience, we're able to see things from a different point of view and hopefully gain insight into how to handle the challenge, right? This allows us to expand our own thinking and hopefully it gives us solutions that we never thought of before. Additionally, hearing about other people's struggles can help us feel less alone. One of my favorite pieces of both the podcast and the coaching program is when I hear managers say, like, oh my gosh, I had no clue that I wasn't the only one feeling this way. Sharing stories reminds us that everyone goes through difficult times and it is possible to get through them. Knowing that someone else has been through something similar can help us create our own hope and motivation. I had a really beautiful example of this by way of one of my close friends here in the Twin Cities. A group of girlfriends and I went to a Christmas market and we all stopped at this stand that was selling jewelry. And the jewelry and the pendants were gorgeous. And not only that, but the shopkeepers were excellent at selling. I noticed myself starting to get uncomfortable because I was feeling pressured to buy something. And I knew that I really needed to be mindful of my money. As one of my friends was interacting with the shopkeeper directly asked for the sale. And my friend responded to it so beautifully. I'm gonna butcher what she said, but it was something to the effect of, "I would absolutely love to buy from you today because I love what you have to offer, but I'm just not in a place financially to do so, and so I'm going to politely decline, but thank you for taking the time to show me all of your beautiful pieces." My friend nailed it. It was kind, it was open, but it was also direct and clear. And as she said it, I could feel my own discomfort starting to lighten. So a few months went by, and after the holidays, I was planning a group trip with some of my college friends. Now, the gals that I'm going with are all married with 2 incomes, and they're all doing very well for themselves. So the Airbnbs that they were suggesting really reflected a higher price point than what I was able to afford on my own. And I could feel that same discomfort starting to come up, that same feeling from the holiday market. It was the feeling that I was about to spend money that I didn't necessarily want to spend, and that I'd likely have to stretch myself in order to make it happen. But then I remembered my friend and how she so beautifully said no. So I took a deep breath and I sent a message that said I absolutely loved the Airbnbs that they were suggesting, but also that they were out of my price range and that I appreciated being invited on the trip. Now, I was initially kind of worried about the response that I was going to get from my friends, but lucky for me, they were more than understanding of me and where I'm at. And within a half an hour, we found a different Airbnb, one within my price range, and one that we all agreed on. My friend's story became my story. I want to put a caveat in here that when I'm talking about storytelling, I'm talking about sharing experiences that could help others in some way. I'm not talking about having pity parties or gossip sessions, but to some degree, venting can be cathartic and bonding, right? It's nice to know that we're not alone in our struggles. As an example, a couple months ago, I took an advanced de escalation course, and it was a great opportunity to learn about the science behind calming someone down. We all know within this industry, people lose their shit all the time. And that could be anyone from a resident, a tenant, a vendor, an employee, a client, an owner. It's essential that we know how to stay regulated when someone else is not. As the class went on, more and more managers started sharing their war stories, so to speak. We've all had experiences where we were handling residents who were beside themselves, right? It's not uncommon that at some point in your career in this industry, you get into a situation where you feel incredibly unsafe. Now, hearing those stories was difficult, but it also reminded me that others have been in my shoes and that there is more than one way to handle a tough situation. Hearing their stories boosted my confidence that the next time I find myself in a sketchy situation, I'm going to have more knowledge to react in a way that keeps everyone safe. Much of what we do in property management really cannot be taught through a textbook or an online course. There is no manual or procedure for how to keep your cool when someone's losing it. And yet, one of the most valuable skills a manager can have is the ability to stay emotionally regulated within stressful situations. Again, venting can be helpful, but it can also have the opposite effect. If you're not sure if you're venting versus sharing stories, one thing that you can ask yourself is, what am I trying to get out of this interaction? If you're seeking validation, you're likely venting. If you're brainstorming solutions, you're likely sharing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a little bit of venting so long as you're also working to solve your current problem and or you're seeking out ways to avoid the same problem in the future. So, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that you listen to these stories every other week. It is really a joy to share them with you, and it's even more fun to receive feedback and hear your stories. So, if you have a story or piece of advice that you think would be helpful for other managers, get in contact with me at hello@annahavliana.com, and I would love to hear it, and I would absolutely love to share it. All right, my friends, until next time, I love you. Keep going.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Addicted to Busy. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.